Thank you, Eliza, Bliss, and Henry for that lovely performance. I would also like to thank Ms. Hardy, although she couldn't be here, and Mr. Smith for making tonight possible. Louis Fuey for being a king, Mix Miller for slaying everybody's life, Mr. G, my advisor, Mr. Schmidt for keeping the green in Greenberg, Mr. Tom for keeping me somewhat sane, the health center for making sure I'm alive, Ella and Nikki for making sure I don't sleep through classes, Charlie for holding me accountable, and most importantly, Sandy Greenberg, my icon of a mother. To prevent any confusion, I decided not to have anybody introduce this talk, because I believe it fits the theme. And there is not a specific story being told, but rather the 3 life lessons that I take pride in and wanted to share. The worst feeling in the entire world is when nobody, including yourself, knows who you are. When I realized this my sophomore year, it prompted a personality crisis. I was a new student, fresh out of the pandemic, and unaware of how my actions affected others. While Millbrook kept telling me that I was known and needed, I felt isolated from understanding my identity and the world surrounding me. Eventually, I was forced to leave school on a med leave, where I was supposedly taking the time to work on myself. It didn't work. You would think that during all my weekly therapy and doctor's appointments, I would finally start to understand myself better. But somehow this form of self-help didn't seem to bring me closer to finding my place in the world. Consequently, junior year was a complete disaster. The people I surrounded myself with encouraged me to act impulsively, and I lacked discipline and self-control. My friends and I were unaware of how toxic we were for one another, and once again, my identity seemed to escape me. Because we were always together, we minimized how awful our dynamic was and never really dealt with our problems. I can now admit that I wasn't as good a friend I could have been, and sadly, I blame many others for our relationship's problems. Being with the same people 24/7 only made me more insecure. I could not form my identity aside from my friend group. Therefore, when I became my own best friend, I knew who I was more than I had ever expected. Mostly, we tend to focus on external insecurities, but never really mention our internal ones. We are exposed to various beauty standards, forcing us to prioritize our appearance rather than our inner expression. Society reinforces this idea that we need to present ourselves in a certain way, but why should we force ourselves to comply with a standard that just doesn't represent who we are? This is why there's no argument about maintaining a relationship with yourself and how it affects every single aspect of your life. It's definitely easier to avoid chaos in communication than to deal with it head on, but it's not smart. Finding what truly made me happy allowed me to think. We need to think. This is where I discovered my passion for creativity. In my free time, I find myself in the dark room, which has become my safe space. I love my safe space. Find your safe space. Whether you're an athlete, an artist, or an academic weapon, your hobbies will bring out the real you. I had to start admitting when I was wrong, or else this growth became impossible. This was difficult, to say the least. Ask your friends to hold you accountable. Be an honest person and surround yourself with real people. The best part about personal growth is that it is constant. Individuals develop as society does, so this is why we have to have the growth mindset that we talk about so often. I eventually lost the need to prove myself to others, was able to expand my perspectives, and I started to feel comfortable in my own skin. There is only one you, and you need to accept it in order to live a happy life. Although junior year was one of the darkest times in my life, I do appreciate the 3 lessons that I learned. The first lesson that resonates with me is how every single decision has a more significant impact than we assume. It seems like a no shit moment, but as humans, our emotional mind will take over our logical one. Now, what is this emotional mind, you might ask? Well, it stops us from realizing that there are multiple ways to handle a singular situation. When my emotions consumed me, I tended to regret many of the things I had said because of how immature I had presented myself. Our logical mind does the exact opposite, but it takes more effort. My second lesson is how learning becomes challenging if we don't question absolutely everything. The key is to ask why this or why that, even if it's a stupid question, to build a more robust perspective on a situation. As high schoolers, we will inevitably put someone down in a way to benefit ourselves, whether we mean what we said or not. It's part of who we are. Humans will make judgments. We just need to question them. Like everybody else, I find myself being judgmental while in a bad mood. But I remember to question myself. Is it making me feel better? Did this person go against me in any way? Or am I straight up jealous? Questioning ourselves provides answers. The third and most important lesson I learned is being self-aware gives us the power to influence our outcomes. I see self-awareness as the ability to understand our thoughts, feelings, and actions. And here's the thing, I am not close to reaching this complete self-awareness that I'm up here preaching about. I make mistakes, it's what we do, but the more we learn, it becomes clear that self-awareness is the foundation of personal growth, healthy relationships, and effective communication. While preparing for my talk, I began to read Patrick King's The Art of Self-Awareness. If I could read this book out loud to the entire school, I would. King states, self-awareness is simply not knowing your name. It is what makes you happy, what makes you sad, and the underlying beliefs and values that create those emotions. This book genuinely furthered my understanding of myself and my relationships. Another point that King made was about understanding the human shadow and how humans contain good and evil within themselves. There are definitely multiple interpretations to what is good and what is evil, and it depends on our morals as individuals, but no matter what, it is crucial to be aware of both parts of the mind. There are definitely more factors in emotional growth that I'm still trying to learn myself. For example, self-motivation, which is a subset of self-management. It's one of those things that someone can only help you so much before you need to take control yourself. Motivation pushes people to exceed what was initially perceived as impossible. However, I'm still not great at this. You can ask Mr. Powers. It's where I stand in my self-journey today. There are moments where I simply cannot find the motivation to leave my room, put effort in school, or even work on myself. But I do know that I will continue to mature as long as I have a growth mindset and keep my emotions balanced. Now, if you zoned out, which is inevitable during a Thursday chapel talk, I'm guilty of it too. Here's the summary. At the end of the day, nobody can help you as much as you can help yourself. This is why the closer I became to my inner self, the closer my relationships with the people around me became. It's an ongoing process that requires time, effort, and a willingness to be honest with ourselves. You and I will continue to make mistakes, but we will become happier in the long run while being conscious of that. And with that, sixth form and faculty, you are dismissed.